Today we're talking about why running long is so hard. My name is Shona Hendricks, I'm from CoachParry.com. The long run is really a cornerstone in an endurance program. It's a vital part of your training program. And very often you may be struggling with this long run or being able to sustain your runs for a long period of time. And so today's video is going to dive into why this may be and some aspects that you can put into your training to help you with this. I'm going to hand you over to Lindsey and he's going to kick us off.
The first reason why people often don't enjoy the long training runs or think that they aren't suited to long endurance events is that we simply run too fast. If you run your long runs too fast, that leaves you sore, it leaves you really tired, it leaves you low on energy, and that's often when you need to have that nap in the afternoon just to get through the day. So it's key to run your long runs at the right pace. You should run a long run slow enough that it almost feels like it could get a little bit boring, and when you get to the end you should always feel like you've got more in the tank and that you could have gone a little bit further.
Another reason why that long run is so difficult is people tend to just push through, keep running, and you get to a point, it's probably happened to you, where you get to that long point in a run where you just feel you cannot go anymore, and suddenly you just fall off a cliff and your pace just hits a wall and you absolutely are forced to walk. Walk breaks are a really cool tool to implement into your training. Lindsey's already spoken about pacing. Walk breaks are a really good way for you to force yourself into slowing down and running those easy runs, those long runs, easy enough. Why do we want to implement walk breaks into those long runs and not just keep pushing through? The idea is for sustained effort. We want to be able to run for longer or keep a particular effort or intensity for longer. And by implementing walk breaks early on, not just when you feel you absolutely need to, it means you taking that eccentric loading off the legs, you protecting the legs, allowing the legs to push a little bit harder a little bit later on into those runs. So it really is just managing the effort level and the sustained effort so that you are keeping the legs as fresh as possible for as long as possible. Here at Coach Parry, we have a sliding scale that we use to determine when you should be walking, how often you should be walking, and then for how long. On the one end of the sliding scale, we like to put sort of the older runner or slower runners. I'm not saying those two are the same thing, but they tend to work quite well on this particular scale. And on the other end of the scale, we talk younger runners and faster runners. Now, at the slower runner or the older runner, you can take slightly longer walk breaks, so about 90-second walk breaks a little more frequently. And on the faster end or the younger end of the scale, you can take slightly shorter walk breaks, around 60-second walk breaks, a little less frequently. When we're talking walk breaks, we're not saying a Sunday stroll, go out there, chat to everyone. What we're talking is a brisk walk. We want to just take that eccentric loading off the legs, keep the legs fresh for as long as we can, but it is still a brisk walk. The reason I say that is we get a bit of pushback from time to time where people are saying, but I'm chasing an average pace and my average pace is going to drop hugely. In the short 60 seconds or 90 seconds that you are doing a brisk walk, it has very little effect on your overall average pace for a particular run. So you don't have to stress about it, and I can tell you the fact that you are keeping the legs fresh for longer will actually end up cancelling that out than if you get to a point and you haven't implemented those walk breaks where you're going to start to tank at the end and that average pace means absolutely nothing anyway.
One of the reasons why you might be struggling with your long run is that you don't fuel your long runs. You're not taking in the right amount of nutrition for that long run. There is a school of thought that believes that you should be doing some of these long runs fasted in order to get into a more fat oxidative state, and there is some truth in that. But however, what ends up happening if you do get into doing so much of these long runs in a fasted state is that you might become more efficient at oxidizing fat as your fuel source. But the studies have really shown that while that is the case in a test environment, it doesn't always translate across to performance. Okay, so there is that we just need to be aware of, and I think that's one of the reasons why people don't necessarily fuel their long runs all the time and give their body the energy that it needs to get through that entire long run. And so we really do believe that it is important to fuel your long runs, to give your body the energy that it requires to sustain that. If you're not doing that, what's probably going to happen is you're going to start that long run feeling pretty good, and then towards the end of that long run, you're just going to feel like you're completely falling out or bonking out of that, and it's such a struggle to get to the end of that long run. And so you want to either or have a breakfast beforehand that sustains the beginning part of that long run, and then every hour be taking in some sort of carbohydrate to again sustain you for that entire time. If we're not doing that, what tends to happen is that we're constantly finding ourselves in a depleted state, and you're not going to be able to finish that long run, but it's also going to have a knock-on effect on all your other sessions as you go through the week, because it's going to have an effect on your recovery as well.
Another reason why the long runs can be hard is because we often don't know where we're running. We haven't pre-planned or thought about a route. I know I struggle that if I'm running laps, or if I'm running anywhere near my house, or if I've driven somewhere and I'm running anywhere near my car and I have to do a long run, it's very easy for me to decide when I'm tired, you know what, that's it, I'm getting in the car and I'm going home, grabbing a coffee on the way. You need to pre-plan a route. That means thinking about how long the run needs to be, where is going to be the best way that's one, safe for you to run, but also doesn't have any escape routes necessarily for you. A really good way, and I know some of my colleagues will often talk about getting dropped off 20 kilometers from home if they need to do a long run, and running home and they've got no other option. In an example like that, I'd probably recommend leaving your phone at home as well, so you don't get tempted to phone Uber and give yourself a ride home. But the idea here is where you really just want to give it a little bit of forethought. Think about where you're going to run. Keep in mind your nutrition and your hydration as well. So for some of those long runs, when you are planning your route, potentially think about places along the way that you might be able to stop quickly if you need to buy a bottle of water, if it does get to that. If you're struggling and you've run out of nutrition, you might be able to buy something to eat as well. So it's all that kind of planning that does have to go into it beforehand, but I can tell you will make that run so much easier, because then all you have to worry about is running and not constantly thinking about, should I turn left here? Should I go? I don't know where I'm going. When that starts to happen, it's really just too easy to tap out and go home.
Another factor that plays into why people struggle so much on long runs is that they simply start too long. So when you are building a plan or getting into something or building up to a race, it's important that you very slowly build up that long run. A pretty good rule of thumb is to not increase long runs by more than 10%. So make sure you start training for your event early enough and allow yourself to just slowly but surely and steadily add on to that long run, so you're not adding half an hour onto each long run, which will leave you feeling like you're reaching every single week.
Another reason why you might be struggling to finish these long runs or really do them effectively is that you're not structuring your training plan in the week correctly. A couple of big mistakes that we see people making is that they do more than 2 consecutive runs, so maybe running all 4 of your runs in a row. Then of course you're not going to get the most out of that last session, because you've added all this load and not given yourself enough recovery time between sessions in order to really get the maximum benefit of that long run. It could be that you perhaps have done your higher intensity session, really pushed yourself super hard, not given yourself enough recovery time, and then gone out to go and do your long run after that as well. So the way you structure your week is absolutely vital. We want to definitely ensure that we're putting our strength and our cross training in the right sort of places, in line with this long run and all the other sessions, so that we're not necessarily going into these sessions absolutely fatigued and almost, you know, overreached a little bit in terms of then getting the maximum benefit out of the long run. I don't mind if you are doing your long runs on slightly tired legs from a strength perspective. So let's say you've done a harder strength session. I'd prefer that harder strength session is done before a long run as opposed to something like your interval run. But again, we don't want to constantly feel absolutely shattered and tired. And so if you're going into that long run with slightly tired legs and they stay tired for the entire long run, that means that there's something wrong in the way that you've structured your week. But if you start your long run, legs are slightly tired, but then after a couple of minutes it kind of eases up and you warm up and it feels great, you've probably done the structure of your week correctly.
So those long runs are a key aspect to any training plan and are really important. Now you know a couple of ways to make those easier and a little bit more manageable. If you are interested in seeing how the long run fits into the bigger plans, check out the video on screen now. If you've got value out of this video, please hit the like button, hit subscribe if you want to get any of our future content, and check out any of the videos that we have available now on screen.